Frederick Rudolph, class of 1942. One of the most celebrated historians of American undergraduate education, Professor Rudolph's scholarly achievements and civic contributions to Williams span more than 7 decades. At Williams, Rudolph was a House officer, junior advisor, member of the College Council and the Gargoyle Society, and editor of the Williams Record. After serving as a captain in the U.S. Army, he returned to Williams in 1951 to teach history. He continued in that role until 1982 and is currently the Mark Hopkins Professor of History Emeritus. During his tenure on the faculty, he pioneered the interdisciplinary program now known as American Studies and wrote 2 classic texts on higher education: The American College and University, A History and Curriculum, A History of the American Undergraduate Course of Study since 1636. Rudolph is also the author of Mark Hopkins and the Log. In addition, he has served as class president, chair of his 50th reunion, Tyng administrator, college marshal, and member of the Bicentennial Commission, and the Williams College Museum of Art Visiting Committee. He received his Ph.D. in history from Yale University in 1953. Welcome, Professor Rudolph.
Thank you. So here we are, my fellow panelists and I, about to explain our lives at the purple pearly gates. We know the results, but we don't get in until tomorrow morning. You, as well as I, probably thought that I was expected to discuss old age this afternoon. But my wife tells me that on that subject, I am a bore. So let me simply say that 80 is much better than 90, and that 90 is better than 91. And the 6 great-grandchildren in the swimming pool is less frightening than you might think. As for Dottie, let it be understood that whatever I am being honored for, she has been here and there for over 60 years, playing an essential and loving role. If I had any influence here, Williams would be honoring her rather than me. Let us begin with how I got here in the first place. As a freshman in the fall of 1938, I was influenced to apply to Williams by my admiration for 2 secondary school teachers who were Williams graduates of the 1920s, New England farm boys of the sort that allowed the college to argue inaccurately that it was not a rich man's college. And so that was the year I began this almost 75-year relationship. Freshman year began with fraternity rushing and the 1938 hurricane, and I'm not sure which was worse. In any case, I ended up in the Garfield Club, the designated harbor for the rejected. A year or so later, I joined a fraternity, but that freshman year, on the wrong side of the tracks, gave me an understanding about this place that would have been otherwise denied me. As a sophomore, I perfected my bridge game and flunked geology. My generation of college students was spared 2 of the pressures and tensions experienced by today's undergraduates: getting in and launching a career. In those days, colleges did not turn anyone down. And even in freshman year in 1938, we all knew we were going to war. A month after graduation, in May 1942, I was in the Army. A year or so later, I was in New Guinea. And 4 years later, after graduation, I was a returning veteran visiting Williamstown, being offered $2,400 a year for an appointment as an instructor in history. The war had lasted long enough, and the days and nights in New Guinea and the Philippines were dreary enough that time was allowed to think about a postponed consideration of career. Although for a while, under the influence of a soldier friend, I gave some thought to the entirely inappropriate job of managing a swing band, I decided that I wanted to be a college teacher. So the Williams offer to get some teaching experience before going to graduate school was seized. 3 years at Yale Graduate School, 1947 to 50, included marriage in 1949 and a crucial decision about a choice of dissertation subject. At a meeting with my dissertation advisor, a search for a topic began and ended when he asked, "Fred, what do we know? What does it mean when it is said that the ideal college is Mark Hopkins on one end of a log and all that stuff?" Ralph Gabriel had unleashed a historian of American higher education. Did I expect that career to play out at Williams? Did I want it to occur at Williams? I hadn't given it a thought. I knew that my dissertation would require research here, but I hadn't gotten that far when a telephone call in the spring of 1950 from Charlie Keller at Williams asked if I would be available to teach some sections of American history and European history in the next year. Of course I would. And before those courses began, I could move to Williamstown and launch my research. Why had Williams, in the spring of 1950, suddenly needed someone to pick up some courses in the forthcoming year? My return to Williamstown was made possible by Dick Nixon's successful attacks on Alger Hiss, who lost his job at the Carnegie Foundation for International Peace, which went to Williams and hired Joe Johnson as his replacement. Nixon got Hiss, Carnegie got Johnson, and Williams got Fred Rudolph. And I am living evidence of the role of the accidental in history. During the years that followed, appointments as instructor and then as assistant professor allowed me, with the college's encouragement, to grow as a teacher and a scholar. I was asked to develop new courses, one with a colleague who wanted to offer what I suspect was the first course in Negro history at a non-black college. Sabbatical leaves and Guggenheim fellowships provided time for 5 books. The dissertation, Mark Hopkins and the Log, was published by the Yale University Press in 1956 and met with a warm reception. A Guggenheim Fellowship allowed for a year in Washington, where I began work on a book that moved from the micro of Williams to the macro of the history of American higher education since the founding of Harvard. Before I could finish the research, I was asked if I would give a course in the history of American education at Harvard. It was arranged that I would be on leave from Williams, teaching at Harvard for the second term of the 1959-60 and 1960-61 college years. The Harvard course consisted in part of 2 lectures a week on the history of American higher education. The first year, I worked up the lectures. The second, I refined them. And at the end of the second year, I had the manuscript of a book of 22 chapters that Knopf would publish the next year as the American College and University, a History. It has sold about 80,000 copies and is still in print. There is also a Japanese edition. Let me note that I did not lecture at Williams. My teaching, shall we say, was conversational. If I'm going to justify this successful visit to the Purple Pearly Gates, I suppose that I should pay some attention to the conditions that nurtured his career in teaching and scholarship. I avoided the lure of administrative positions. I enjoyed teaching and I liked to write. And as well as it seemed to me, I lacked the temperament of a good administrator. Nonetheless, I was offered administrative positions at Williams and elsewhere. At one institution, Dottie was asked, "Mrs. Rudolph, what kind of house can we build for you? Here are the plans of the house that is underway for the head of our women's college." So another condition that nurtured my career was the assent and support of my wife. She did not get that house, although she would have been a superb college president's wife. What she was a superb college professor's wife. Another supporting condition of my career was the degree to which the Williams classroom was a remarkably independent operation, where the teacher could play a significant role in liberating young men and women from their parents and their pasts. This was a process that even the students could enjoy. No one told me what to teach or how. I was free to assign Betty Friedan's feminist mystique to an initially bewildered group of senior males. I was free to accept, as a thesis student, a young man who wanted to do a guide to the birds of the Adirondacks. The biology department considered it an unworthy subject. The thesis was published, and the author is now the world's authority on birds of paradise and in charge of a major biodiversity undertaking in Papua New Guinea. Also, what made both teaching and research possible was that one did not get in the way of the other. I found that I could not successfully do research during the college year, nor did I teach when I was on leave. Some sense of the rewards, and heaven knows they were not monetary, must also have informed my years as a teacher. I think of the friendships that have given me in old age the love of so many alumni, and the satisfaction that comes from watching and participating in the growth and shaping of individual lives. Of course, there were bumps. Not making a fraternity freshman year, doing poorly enough on the graduate record exam to warrant a guarded letter of acceptance from Yale, flunking my orals, and wrestling with the tenure process at Williams. On the other hand, I was president of one of the best fraternities my senior year. My first day of classes at Yale, an essay of mine appeared as the lead article of the American Historical Review. My dissertation received prizes as the best in history and the best submitted in all fields at Yale that year. At Williams, tenure did arrive, and here I am. Managing those bumps required belief in myself and belief in me by others, parents, wife, mentors, and friends. I retired in 1982, almost 20 years ago, at the age of 62. Retirement in those days was compulsory at 65, but available at 62 at half a salary and no teaching for one's final 3 years. I was haunted by professors who soured before they retired. I didn't think that likely in my case, but everything was going so well that I decided to stop at 62. My early retirement launched Dottie and me on years of postponed foreign travel. My anthology of Williams documents, Perspectives, came out in 1983, and research on a sequel to the Mark Hopkins book was pursued and continued until the college needed my office, and I saw the scope of my proposed book growing broader than my energies. My notes are now in the college archives. You who wander these grounds may have found yourself in the college cemetery, where you might have seen our gravestone, a birthday gift to me from Dottie several years ago. Every year we hear reports that we are already there. Not yet, not quite yet. Thank you.